biggest issues facing Charleston addressed tonight. Overdevelopment and managing growth, combating crime and working to make the community safer, and the challenges of draining a city next to an ocean. One incumbent hoping to keep his seat and 5 candidates fighting to take it. Tonight, you decide who gets your vote. Live from the News 2 studio in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, this is the Charleston Mayoral Debate.
Good evening and welcome. I'm your host, Brendan Clark, and we are a little over a week away from the November 7th election. Voters making their decision on who they want to lead the city of Charleston. Tonight, over the next 60 minutes, you will hear from each candidate: Mika Gadsden, Deborah Gammons, William Cogswell, Clay Middleton, John Tecklenburg, and Peter Shahid. But before we get to tonight's topics and questions, we want to go over the rules for the next 60 minutes. Every candidate will have 60 seconds to answer each question. If there is a follow-up question or rebuttal, they will have 30 seconds. And when time is up, you will hear this sound. Each candidate will also have 60 seconds for a closing argument. So, with that being said, it's time to begin the News 2 Charleston Mayoral Debate with tonight's moderators, Carolyn Murray and Riley Benson. Carolyn, Riley, the floor is yours.
Brendan, thank you. Good evening, everyone. We are looking forward to hearing from the candidates tonight.
For all those who are following along at home, we ask that you please use the hashtag #CHSMayorDebate.
A card draw determined who will go first, and Mika Gadsden, the first question is for you. Candidates, we remind you to take a look at the screens as you will find out more about a poll and the results of that poll. The first question is, a majority of Charleston voters we poll think the top priority for the next mayor should be managing growth and development. According to U.S. Census data, approximately 30 people move to the Charleston area every day. Ms. Gadsden, what would you do on day one to control overdevelopment? And you have 60 seconds to respond.
Well, yeah, that question really does paint an accurate picture of what it's like to live in Charleston. I'm a working class candidate and I'm a renter. What I'd like to do is do what I'm already doing. I'm the co-chair of the Friends of Gadsden Creek, and I'm currently holding development account in the court systems. We have to rein in big development, make sure that we do away with fee in lieu of taxes, and make sure that developers also provide affordable housing, and not just affordable housing for those who earn 80 to 120% of the area median income. We need to provide affordable housing for folks earning around 50, even 30% of area median income. I'd mandate that and make sure that developers are paying their fair share and that we hold them accountable.
Thank you. Ms. Gammons, the same question for you. What would you do on day one to control overdevelopment? You have 60 seconds.
Thank you. As mayor, I will continue to work with everyone, looking at city government, looking at the employees, and finding ways to collaborate in order to manage growth. It's important to have a clear, comprehensive plan that includes everyone. And I will do that, bringing volunteers in on the Mayor's Task Advisory Committee and making sure everyone has a say on what needs to be done. Managing growth is so important. Zoning ordinances need to be amended. So I will be working with City Council along with those volunteers on the Mayor's Advisory Task Force in order to create height restrictions, in order to look at density and making sure it's not too dense, and looking at those particular areas where you have homes that have been there for hundreds of years, and making sure that you don't have something that overlooks those particular homes, and preserving our natural environment. I will make sure that is done. No more infilling of creeks or marshes, having a view for the river.
Thank you, Ms. Gammons. Mr. Cogswell, you have 60 seconds to respond.
Sure, absolutely. I think development is out of control. I think what it's doing to the character and DNA of our city is very problematic because you know, Charleston is a very special place, and what we see going up all over the city is kind of anywhere USA, and that's been particularly true over the past 8 years. So this is a world I know very well. I know people get nervous about somebody being in the real estate business going into politics, but the business I've been in and preserving historic buildings, adding character to our city, I think is an experience that will be well served in City Hall. and frankly something that's been lacking in terms of vision in particular. But when you get down to it, we need to revamp our planning and engineering department because there's a lot of dysfunction at the city. And I'll also say this, when it comes to smart growth, you need to make sure that infrastructure is in place before development happens, and that has not been happening in our region. Thank you.
Mr. Cogswell, thank you. Mr. Middleton, your response, please, and you have 60 seconds to respond.
So the issue that we have in the city of Charleston is we continue to grow, but it's not growing in a smart, equitable manner. And so we do not have to say yes to every development that takes place. So as mayor of the city of Charleston, one of the first things that I would do outside of assessing what is already on the books, the things that have been approved over the last few years will come online in the next 4 years. So making it clear for new development that takes place, making sure that the infrastructure is there, making sure that it's green infrastructure to make sure that as we address climate and other related matters that we do it holistically and that we are proactive in doing those activities. The other thing I would do is have a community benefits ordinance so that we know what is going to take place on the front end versus hoping and wishing that developers do right on the back end. I think by doing those things, we can truly manage growth smartly and also have the community involved, neighborhoods involved in particular, and how their community will look.
Thank you. Mr. Tecklenburg, your response, please, and you have 60 seconds.
Well, thank you. We have to develop in a very thoughtful fashion, and it has to be in sync with the city of Charleston. So a great example is the Union Pier proposal that came forward. And from the beginning, I said it was too tall, too dense, too many hotel rooms, and not enough affordable housing. So we reset that whole process so we would rethink the development of that important site so that it's in sync with our city. So a couple of other points, though, is to build in the right places. And we're redoing our zoning codes so that you do not build in low-lying areas. We're just creating problems for the future if we allow folks to build where we know it's going to flood in the future. Lastly, build near transit, public transit. And we need to improve public transit. We're going to bring forward low country rapid transit. And transit-oriented development is around where those transit stops will be.
Mr. Tecklenburg, thank you very much for your response. Mr. Shayed, you have 60 seconds to respond.
Thank you. Overdevelopment is challenging our character and our way of life in the city of Charleston. And as you mentioned, 30 folks are coming to the area on a daily basis. First thing I would do is make sure that we follow the existing plans we have in place dealing with how we are going to develop our neighborhoods and make sure that any new development does not impact negatively those neighborhoods that we have in our city. I would re-examine the rezoning laws that we have to make sure that we can develop smartly and we can develop with some control of where those houses and where those commercial places are going to be located. Make sure we're not developing in flood-prone areas, and also re-examine our decisions on improving our areas with including density where needed.
Thank you, Mr. Shayed. Riley.
Carolyn, thank you. Candidates, we're going to move along to our second topic of the night and our second question as well. Ms. Gamons, we're going to start with you. The question: the city has spent millions of dollars trying to fix the problem of flooding in Charleston. Part of that involves the city working with the Army Corps of Engineers to construct an 8-foot protective seawall around the peninsula. It's expected to cost an estimated $1.1 billion. By a show of hands, who is in favor of the seawall? All right, Ms. Gamons, like I said, we're going to start with you. You have 60 seconds to explain why you did not raise your hand.
I'm not in favor of the seawall because it only addresses one issue in one area of the city. And we have to remember that the city of Charleston means the peninsula, west of the Ashley, part of Johns Island, part of James Island, and also Daniel Island. So it's important when we're addressing these issues to take a holistic view of our city, our beautiful city. So I am not in favor of that, again, because money is going in one area for one issue, and that does not address flooding. It's only for storm surges. And if you look at the plans thus far, it's not something that is visually pleasing. And we love Charleston. We live in this beautiful city because of the aesthetics. So that is the reason I would say let us put our money where we will affect everyone in those other areas in town where they are experiencing flooding. So that's my reason for not supporting it.
Ms. Gamons, thank you. Mr. Cogswell, the same question to you. Just please explain your stance.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question that sea level rise is an existential threat, and we don't have a lot of time to waste on protecting the city, not just the peninsula, but the entire city against it. And so when you look at the Army Corps study, and I've dug into it in some detail, and I've talked to other cities that have embarked on this same federal program, it's kind of a one-size-fits-all. As Ms. Gammons pointed out, it is only set up or designed to withstand storm surge, and to put that size structure around our city, our peninsula, with that kind of dollar amount, frankly, I don't think is realistic in terms of we don't have the funding for our share of it, and I don't think we will have the votes because the rest of the city, West Ashley, Johns Island, Daniel Island, probably won't vote for $400 million expenditure that only protects the peninsula where they will be underwater during that storm surge event. Thank you.
Mr. Cogswell, thank you. Mr. Middleton, the same question.
So in 2018, Congress authorized the Army Corps of Engineers to do this study. So I believe it is in our best interest to let that process go through. The process is not done. The issues that I have is that there's some people that have not been involved in that process. I do have an issue with the phasing of it because for the natural barriers part of it, you have Bridgeview Apartments, Rosemont are in different phases of development. That is a problem. Why is it that those that would be mostly impacted would come in second and third phases? So I do believe we have to answer the question of how do we pay for this? Yes, the Army Corps of Engineers, if this is approved and then it moves forward, then the city of Charleston has to come in with, I believe, 35%, which is about $400 million. We have to answer the question, how do we pay for it? And recognizing that this does not solve everyday flooding. So the process needs to continue, and I believe as mayor of the city of Charleston, I'm well suited.
Mr. Middleton, thank you. Mr. Tecklenburg, the same question to you.
So we've just gotten through the feasibility study, and it was approved by Congress, by the way, which means if we get to an acceptable project, that the federal government will pay 65%. Now that's something like $830 million to help Charleston protect itself from sea level rise and storm surge. And yes, all flooding risks will be taken into account. Surge, tidal, rainfall. Why would you leave $830 million on the table? It would be irresponsible not to at least go through the design engineering phase and find out if we can design a project that's acceptable, that will protect our city for decades to come.
Mr. Tecklenburg, thank you. Mr. Shea had the same question. Please explain your stance. You have 60 seconds.
So obviously we need something to protect the city from storm surge. The battery we have now has done an excellent job to some limited extent in doing that. However, the city has limited financial resources in addressing this particular issue. Our own consultants have told us there's approximately 200 other flooding-related projects that the city needs to be addressing throughout the course of time. Some of those projects are in West Ashley and some are on James Island. So the money that we have allocated is going to be limited, and we need to be putting our priorities into order, which is addressing those issues that affect our neighborhoods on a regular basis. So these projects that we're talking about will help keep water out of people's bedrooms, their garages, their yards. And if we don't start addressing those issues first, then we're neglecting our neighborhoods and we're neglecting the rest of the city. So I would say let's address those projects first before we address anything else.
Mr. Shea, thank you. Ms. Gadsden, the question goes to you. You have 60 seconds.
Well, just briefly, from the start, the project is flawed. It requires outmoded pumps, diesel pumps that will be inundated by water. And those pumps happen to be on back order for about 2 years. It's more cement when we need to be moving toward more green infrastructure. So we need green infrastructure solutions. We've already done the studies, completed the studies like the Dutch dialogues, which suggested that we revitalize places like the Gadsden Creek. It's not just because it's a green space that's beautiful, it's because it provides a drainage feature. Our city needs to move in the direction of green infrastructure and stop moving toward policy making and decision making that centers only a select few. The other objection I have is that, yeah, this project only is purported to protect a few Charlestonians. We need to democratize access to sound solutions to the climate crisis, and we need to make sure that each zip code, each area in Charleston, each working class community in Charleston has access to flood relief.
All right, candidates, thank you for your response. Carolyn?
Riley, thank you. Candidates, the next area we will discuss, crime and safety. Please take a look at the monitors again. Charleston County Coroner Bobby Joe O'Neill addressed the increase in drug overdoses in our community. Let's listen to what she had to say.
We have lost way too many of our citizens, our family, our friends, and that is continuing to happen at really unprecedented numbers.
Now, she goes on to say that this is not just a problem on the peninsula of Charleston. It affects every demographic. Recent measures taken across the country include offering drug testing strips on college campuses and making Narcan more widely available. Mr. Cogswell, we begin with you. You have 60 seconds to respond. The question is, would you support similar harm reduction strategies? And what else would you do if elected mayor to address this growing crisis of drug overdoses?
Yes, I would say absolutely anything we can do to address this crisis, and it is a crisis, we should do. And I'm proud to, when I was in the legislature, to have been part of legislation that made South Carolina one of the toughest penalties for drug trafficking, particularly in fentanyl. So we've dealt with it or as aggressively as we can at the state level, and certainly at the local level. We need to make sure the basic rule of law is enforced. And you're seeing it all over the city, as you pointed out, and it's really tragic. I mean, just the other day, or a couple of months ago actually, a sometime columnist for the newspaper sent me pictures of drug overdoses that were occurring just outside where my office is on the east side. And it's tragic. I mean, it really is tragic. So again, it starts with the low-level drug dealers, and you have to enforce a basic rule of law to protect our citizens and make everybody feel safe. Thank you.
Mr. Cogswell, thank you. Mr. Middleton, can you tell us specifically what you would do if elected mayor to address this crisis?
Yes, I think the City of Charleston, the police department, and other nonprofit organizations and the medical industry are doing good things now. So as mayor, I think we need to make sure we focus on having boots on the ground in terms of community engagement and the education phases that are a part of it. We know where these issues are. There's no secret. And in fact, a lot of it is not just within those that are in college, but also throughout the community. So it's very important that we do not treat these people as if something is wrong with them, but we need to go where they are to provide the services that they need and their family needs, providing access to opportunities from education to job training, et cetera, and not look down on them. As mayor of the city of Charleston, we will be right where they are and have those nonprofit organizations, trusted agencies within our community to work day in and day out, not because it's popular, but because it's the right thing to do in and out of season. So as mayor of the Charleston, those are some things I would do.
Thank you, Mr. Middleton. Mr. Tecklenburg, the question is for you. Would you support similar harm reduction strategies, and what else would you do specifically if reelected to address the growing crisis of drug overdoses? You have 60 seconds to respond.
Well, it's a crisis not just in the city of Charleston, but the whole United States. Over 100,000 people died last year from drug overdoses, and mostly from opioids that had been added to other drugs that people were using. So sometimes they don't even know they're taking the opioids. So we formed a community collaborative. It's really led by Judge Brucey Hendricks. She's done an incredible job, including law enforcement and nonprofit agencies and the Charleston Center for Drug Addiction. That's been ongoing for a few years. But we recently received some funding specifically for opioid education and treatment. Our police department has been going around the city with training for Narcan, making Narcan available to our community. All our firefighters and police officers are equipped with Narcan to be able to respond, but we also need to get drug dealers off the street, and we're doing that as well.
Mr. Tecklenburg, thank you. Mr. Shayed, you have 60 seconds to respond. Same question.
Thank you. I served as a federal prosecutor for approximately 10 years here in Charleston, addressing the major drug dealers in our community. And I was very successful in identifying those folks, indicting them, prosecuting them, making sure they went to jail. But we have to look at this on a lower level, and we have to start thinking about not criminalizing the lower level folks who are involved in simple possession of drugs. We do have in the federal system a drug court. We also have on the probate level a drug court that addresses these issues to provide these folks an opportunity with the resources that are available through those particular courts. I served with Judge Hendricks when she and I were both assistant U.S. attorneys. I know her capability. This is something very dear to her heart, and she's done an excellent job in the federal system of addressing this issue, and we just need to continue the programs that we have in place throughout the community in these different levels of courts.
Mr. Shayed, thank you. Ms. Gadsden, your response. 60 seconds, please.
We're not going to arrest our way out of this issue. This is a mental health issue. And for me, this is an indicator that Charlestonians and folks in our region are going through a lot of pain. Folks turn to substances sometimes to medicate. So I believe that we need to take a closer look at our budget, make sure that we reinvest in health services, specifically mental health services. We're a city that boasts the distinction of having the MUSC hospital here, and while that hospital footprint grows, we need to make sure that folks are actually are receiving the benefit of having the type of healthcare environment we have here. But I do believe the city could reinvest in healthcare. We need to make sure that we also are not driving up the inequities that also run alongside of this growing problem. We need to make sure that we are funding mental health services and that we're not sending law enforcement to help out, but we're sending qualified, trained professionals who are trained to address that.
Ms. Gaston, thank you. Ms. Gammons, what would you do as mayor to address the growing crisis of drug overdoses specifically? You have 60 seconds to respond.
As mayor, I see it as a three-pronged issue: education, resources, and also law enforcement. So as mayor, education is crucial, working with our young students, working in the high schools and even the middle schools to inform them of the dangers of drug use. And then when it comes to law enforcement, again, additional training on what that means. Arresting those who are distributing drugs, and making sure those who are using drugs have the resources, have those family resources in place for them. And that's what I would do as mayor. Education, resources for family members, and also law enforcement, properly trained, enforcing the law, and also bringing about this humanity to those who are addicted to drugs.
Ms. Gammons, thank you. Riley?
Carolyn, thank you. Candace, we're going to move along to our next topic of the night. We're going to start with Mr. Middleton. You each have 60 seconds to respond to this question. It has been 3 years since riots broke out in downtown Charleston, sparked by the murder of George Floyd at the hands of the Minneapolis police. If you were mayor at the time 3 years ago, what would you have done differently? Again, 60 seconds to answer.
I would use my military background in the South Carolina Army National Guard in dealing with civil unrest because there was a known threat. We knew what was going to happen because it's been happening throughout our state and other parts of the country. So people could peacefully protest, no issue with that, but I would have cut off access points to better control where they're coming and where they could peacefully protest. I think it was a mistake to have a stand-down order. I think it was a mistake not to be actively engaged as it relates to talking to the citizens, especially the business owners and those that took up arms to protect themselves, their family, and their property. So as mayor of the city of Charleston, I would have acted on the intelligence, and I would not have needed a lesson learned in order to create a problem that was approaching. By doing that, I believe we would have been better prepared to not to have what happened. Even though no one died, I think we can have a better standard than that.
Mr. Middleton, thank you. Mr. Tecklenburg, you were mayor 3 years ago. What, if anything, would you have done differently? You have 60 seconds.
Charleston was not exempt from a national phenomena in reaction to the terrible murder of George Floyd. I stood by Chief Luther Reynolds and our brave first responders that night, both fire and police. And yes, Chief Reynolds was in touch with the FBI and the SLED, and he had all of available intelligence. And his central strategy was to protect life. And at the end of the night, God blessed us that no life was lost, and no one was even hospitalized. Were lessons learned? Yes, lessons were learned. And we've responded better every time since then there's ever been any gathering in the city of Charleston. But I can tell you here tonight, there was no stand-down order issued that night by Police Reynolds or by this mayor. And I stood by our police officers and firefighters while they bravely protected our city.
Mr. Tecklenburg, thank you. Mr. Shea, the same question to you. What, if anything, would you have done differently 3 years ago?
Well, obviously, we were caught a little flat-footed that particular night. And what you have to have is an understanding that Charleston is now a target when it comes to protesting. Even though things happen outside our area and outside our geographic location, we have to understand that people are going to protest in Charleston for whatever reason that may occur. We obviously did not have the information that we needed. And while it's true that we did rely on the FBI and SLED, the best information that you can get is street information, and the best folks who can give you street information are local police officers. They know what's going on the street better than any other law enforcement agency. And while the FBI may have good information and while SLED may have good information, boots on the ground is what you have to rely on to give you that level of information. So we could have done a better job of gathering that street level information. I did meet with a lot of business owners after this riot, and we did learn a lot of lessons, and we can move forward and do a whole lot better next time. Hopefully that just never ever happens again.
Thank you, Mr. Shade. Ms. Gadsden, same question to you.
The incident that transpired has been long litigated, and while I will never minimize the experiences that many business owners went through that night, I think it's important for us to study the root causes of uprisings like the one we experienced that summer. That being said, I don't think that any breakdown from law enforcement was due to the lack of law enforcement. To the contrary, I believe it was a lack of community. Once we saw what transpired during the day, there should have been leadership stepping up to make sure that folks didn't just resume business as usual. There was no way possible businesses were set up for success and to open and to resume their nightly business. They were not set up for success. They had to have received leadership from our city to adjust their schedule to accommodate what was going on. I think it was an absence of community and not necessarily absence of law enforcement.
Ms. Gadsden, thank you. Ms. Gammons, the same question to you. You have 60 seconds.
Thank you. It's difficult to look back and say what you would have done, but if it happened, it's important to be a part of law enforcement. And I've said from the beginning, I would have law enforcement out of patrol cars, walking in neighborhoods when it's good times and when they are bad times. And also, they are building those the trust relationships and establishing those relationships with all members of the community. So when that happened, when that horrible murder happened, being ready. I'm a former prosecutor, I'm an attorney, I've worked with law enforcement, I've worked with victims. And so being ready, being out there, I would be with law enforcement and have a system ready. In case this happens, we need to control it. There's a right to protest in our great country. There is no right to riot and to destroy other people's property.
Ms. Gammons, thank you. Mr. Cogswell, the same question to you. What, if anything, would you have done differently? You have 60 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a complete lack of leadership that happened that night. I think it is a tragic event. It is something that was not Charleston. And when it comes to what I would have done, I would have acted on the intelligence. I would have inputted a curfew like the other cities around here did that seemed to have helped things pretty significantly. I would have stopped the looting when it first started during daylight hours because the first incidents occurred when protesters were on Market Street. So, you know, it's frustrating what happened, but most importantly, the next day, I would have accepted responsibility. That's what the mayor's job is. The mayor's job, and when tragedies like that happen, is to accept responsibility. And I don't see that having happened yet in this case. Thank you.
Mr. Cogswell, thank you. Mr. Tecklenburg, if you'd like to offer a 30-second rebuttal, please do so.
Thank you. So I was with Chief Reynolds that night. We called an emergency meeting of City Council. We declared an emergency. I ordered a curfew. No, the windows didn't break until after dark. We took action to call in reinforcements. I called the National Guard. Again, I stood by Chief Reynolds. We had our police protecting our firefighters as they bravely put out 44 fires that night. Lots of people could have been hurt, and fires could have taken over the city, and we protected this city.
Mr. Tecklenburg, thank you. Ms. Gadsden, a quick 15-second rebuttal.
I agree in part with William in terms of a curfew, but I also want to point out that it wasn't just rioters taking to the streets. There were also business owners that also, and other elements that contributed to some of the chaos. Again, having leadership present would have helped.
Thank you, Ms. Gadsden. Thank you, candidates. Carolyn?
Riley, thank you. The next issue we will discuss is affordable housing. And we begin with you, Mr. Tecklenburg. You have 60 seconds to respond to this question. The question is, according to the Charleston Trident Association of Realtors, the median home price across the city of Charleston is about $600,000. According to MIT, the federal minimum wage does not come close to covering the cost of living in a place such as Charleston, where an adult needs to earn an estimated $19 an hour just to meet basic needs such as shelter and food. So what would you do as mayor to ensure that people who work in Charleston can live in Charleston?
So let me first say that this affordable housing issue is at a crisis level, and I believe it's the limiting factor for our future economic health and vitality here in the region. The city of Charleston is doing more on this issue than any other jurisdiction or entity around. In the last few years, we've invested over $50 million to create or preserve or put in the pipeline over 1,000 units. Is it enough? No, this is a regional problem. That's why we're working with the chamber and other employers and institutions to try to create more affordable housing, including our own Charleston Housing Authority, which this week selected a developer to help transform and multiply the number of units that they have in the city of Charleston. Once again, we've cut red tape. We've made it easier for affordable housing to occur. We've provided incentives, both by density and now by property tax incentives as well.
Thank you, Mr. Tecklenburg.
Thank you.
Mr. Shade, you have 60 seconds to respond to the same question.
We're obviously at a critical point with our inventory of affordable housing that's available for our citizens. You asked earlier and stated earlier that we have 30 new residents coming into the area on a daily basis. Our inventory is down. We need more housing in here. Greenville County, I went to talk to the folks up there, have added 500 affordable housing units per year for the past 3 years. We're not even close to that level of providing affordable housing units in the city. We can partner with the private industry and our private partners to provide for incentives for them to include more affordable housing units for our citizens. And we can work with the federal government with the programs that are in place, the ROD program for one, that can provide more affordable housing units. And we need to look at our zoning laws to provide more density in certain locations to provide more affordable housing inventory in the city of Charleston.
Mr. Shade, thank you. Ms. Gadsden, your response, you have 60 seconds, please.
As the only renter on the stage, I know quite well what the housing crisis has meant. For me, it's not just an economic issue, it's also a public safety issue and a public health issue. We can start by deregulating departments such as the bar. It shouldn't require Herculean effort to want to renovate your home to accommodate affordable housing or to create affordable housing. Also, we need to ease restrictions with regard to the way we build in Charleston. That means maybe reevaluating our height restrictions policy. we're going to be positioned very shortly to have more discretion with our accommodations tax and taxation. So that way we can use accommodations tax from tourism and apply that to affordable housing. We need to also invest in the land trust. The county is moving forward on that, leading on that. We need to lead on that enthusiastically as well.
Thank you, Ms. Gaston. Ms. Gammons, what would you do as mayor to ensure people who work in Charleston are able to live in Charleston?
It's important that we provide homes for everyone, and that would require collaboration with other municipalities, collaboration with federal government, and also with state government in order to get those funds in. Lawmakers create laws, and they can be changed, they can be amended. So as mayor, I will work to amend laws so that we could have more affordable and workforce housing. Another part of that is we have dilapidated buildings all over the city of Charleston. And what the city of Greenville has done when I was assistant city attorney there is use those buildings for the public good. And that's what I would do as mayor, taking a survey of these buildings and using it for public good, of allowing for affordable and workforce housing and allowing people to repair their homes, giving them the incentive to repair their homes, and also giving them assistance in repairing their homes.
Thank you, Ms. Gammons. Mr. Cogswell, you have 1 minute to respond to the same question. Thank you.
I'd say it's embarrassing what's happening. I mean, it's certainly a tragedy if somebody that grows up here cannot come back here to work because they can't afford to live here. We're doing something wrong, and it's not working. Clearly, the mayor talked about $50 million being spent, and that's delivering about 500 to 800 units. The number keeps changing. The website on the city says 500 units. That's 1/3 of what Greenville did in 3-year period, and that's over 8 years. So again, what we're doing is not even coming close to working. We need to try something new. I've suggested that we do a regional housing authority. The housing authority is the largest real estate owner on the peninsula, for example. There's a lot of adaptive reuse that can be done there. We need to change the low-income housing tax credit at the state level, and we need to look to do a cap on long-term owner-occupied residents to prevent gentrification.
Mr. Cogswell, thank you. Mr. Middleton, you have 60 seconds to respond.
Driving until you could afford is not sustainable. And whether you call it attainable housing, workforce housing, or affordable housing, everyone deserves an above average, decent, and safe place to call home. And as mayor of the city of Charleston, there's several things that I would do. One, I would apply for the $500,000 from HUD as it relates to choice neighborhood. That is to plan to implement, and the implementation part of that is $50 million. We, City of Charleston, has not even applied for that. You can do that and the other rental assistance program as well. That gives us an opportunity to revitalize blighted areas. The other thing I would do is create a first right of refusal ordinance so that those individuals that are on a fixed income, and even our seniors, could age in place by being offered the opportunity to purchase that home, or a family member, or a trusted local nonprofit organization. I would also create a tenant bill of rights to make sure that those renters have the rights that they need to make sure that fair housing is that they are included in that. And
I would thank you very much, Mr. Middleton. Mr. Tecklenburg, I will allow you 30 seconds to rebut since Mr. Cogswell mentioned you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So Mr. Cogswell really hasn't been doing his homework. To do a regional housing authority isn't really going to move the needle. The Charleston Housing Authority, yes, has plenty of property, and they're engaged in a RAD program to redevelop it and produce more units. But more importantly, the new ideas that Mr. Cogswell has about dealing with the tax credits and property taxes are all state issues. Why didn't he take care of that when he was in the state legislature? Why didn't he do that?
Mr. Cogswell, you have an opportunity to answer. 15 seconds, please.
Sure, certainly we tried to do that, but we never heard anything from the mayor coming to solicit for it and to advocate for it. And I'll just say this, we're at 3% of the need. 3% over 8 years is what we've been able to accomplish in terms of affordable housing. That's not a good record.
Thank you, Mr. Cogswell. Riley.
Carolyn, thank you, Candace. We're going to move to our next topic tonight. It's on business. Mr. Shea, we're going to start with you. You all have 60 seconds to answer the question. If you go down King Street today, you'll see many mom and pop stores have shuttered. According to a commercial real estate broker, a 1,500 square foot retail space averages between $8,000 and $10,500 per month. What is the answer to attracting and keeping independent local businesses while also keeping Charleston's charm? Mr. Shayed, you have 60 seconds.
My family came here to Charleston, my grandfather, in 1899, and he established a local store called Shade's Apartment Store. It was located at 493 King Street, and it closed back in 1998. King Street back then, as I grew up, was populated with the mom and pop stores that you're talking about. And over time, those stores have evaporated. And you're right, it's the rent, it's the cost of doing business, all those things that have a heavy burden on local businesses. I'm a lawyer, I'm a small business owner, I understand those challenges and demands. We need to provide opportunities for small business owners to be able to maintain in the properties that they own or they rent, to address parking issues with them, address issues dealing with our business taxes with them, and other issues dealing with how we can incentivize and maintain them staying on King Street.
Thank you. Ms. Gadsden, we'll go to you. The same question. You have 60 seconds.
I appreciate the question, but I'd really like to encourage folks to look beyond King Street. I think that's where some of the issue lies. There are other areas in Charleston that deserve investment, and West Ashley is one of those places. I think we need to do things like reevaluate our policies with regard to commercial businesses, doing things like revisiting our parking minimums for certain businesses that are very restrictive. We also could provide fee waivers to make the process for business owners to obtain certain regulations, or obtain certain licenses a little bit easier. Those are things that we could do to help business owners. But again, looking beyond King Street and also looking beyond tourism. While we love tourism and we will never ever forget how much revenue comes from tourism, we need to also invest in other economies and other industries, especially given the fact that climate change will definitely impact tourism moving forward.
Ms. Gadsden, thank you. Ms. Kamens, the same question to you. You have 60 seconds.
I love our city, and I've often said years ago, I don't want to stand at the corner of Calhoun Street and King Street and I could be in New York because of all the change. We've lost so much of our local businesses, so as mayor, I will fight for incentives to make sure that local businesses have the support that they need to stay in place. And also, when we're doing that, making sure they have the support, they have incentives, and be a part of that mayor's task force to ensure that they remain in place. And when it comes to the high price of rent, I've had friends who had to leave the downtown area, go to Mount Pleasant, go to other areas where it is lower. So as mayor, I mentioned to you earlier that these laws are created by people and they can be changed. So I will fight for changes in laws in order to bring into play those local businesses.
Ms. Kamens, thank you. Mr. Cogswell, you have the same question in 60 seconds to respond.
Yeah, when a group of local businesses have to self-tax themselves to provide basic government services, which is what's happening on King Street with the recent business improvement district, you know you're doing something wrong. King Street used to be one of our pride and joys, a hallmark of places for local businesses and where people like to go and shop. Now you're seeing a lot more of the national retailers go in there because that's the only people that can afford it because of things like, again, the bid tax. So from my standpoint, what we need to do is we need to make it easier on smaller businesses, particularly at the city's level. When a small business tries to open up, it takes sometimes a year plus for them to get a permit. That is problematic because they can't afford to pay rent while they're waiting on the city to work through bureaucracy, and that bureaucracy is killing the character of our city.
Mr. Cogswell, thank you. Mr. Middleton, the same question. You have 60 seconds.
We're losing our flavor, and there are a lot of local nonprofit organizations, one in particular, Low Country, Local First, that is rooted in small businesses. So as mayor, and that's not an endorsement, I just know the work that they do, so I'm well aware of the litany of things that they have been advocating for the city of Charleston. So as mayor of the city of Charleston, I think it's very important that we were to create small business districts, local small business districts, because that would ensure that only local businesses, small businesses, are in certain parts of our city. This also gives us a great opportunity to look beyond downtown Charleston. And even now in downtown Charleston, you see other corridors opening up for economic development. This would give us a great opportunity to provide equitable economic development throughout the city of Charleston, not just the peninsula, but West Ashley, James Island, Johns Island, and Daniel Island. I would also have affordable commercial space in every new development as mayor of the city of Charleston.
Mr. Middleton, thank you. Mr. Tecklenburg, you have the same question, 60 seconds.
King Street is one of the top retail streets in America. It's an amazing shopping experience, and as far as occupancy goes, there's about 3% of the properties under renovation for occupancy, but 91% of the other properties are occupied. 94% occupancy. And our surveys show consistently over half of those businesses are local businesses, in fact. Over time, there's always been a healthy mix of national and local businesses. And why are they there? And yes, why are the rents high? There's over 40,000 shoppers on average every day on King Street. And the city is providing wonderful family events as well, like Second Sunday. Come on out if you haven't done that. Recently, we closed a part of Upper King Street at night for the Moja Festival and having family events. It's going to be beautifully decorated for the holidays. I hope everybody will come down to King Street and shop local.
Mr. Tecklenburg, thank you. Candace, thank you. Carolyn.
Riley, thank you. We begin again with you, Ms. Gadsden, and the issue candidates we will discuss this time is education. There has been a lot of talk from parents as well as other local officials about breaking away from the Charleston County School District as a result of issues concerning transparency and diplomacy among its Board of Trustees. So candidates, would you consider leveraging your influence if elected mayor to push for an independent school district, a school district independent of the Charleston County School District? I ask first that you answer yes or no and then explain your response. Again, Ms. Gadsden, we begin with you and you have 60 seconds.
No, I wouldn't. I'm a byproduct of the Charleston County public school systems, and I believe in supporting our public school systems. I don't think that whenever problems arise, we need to just, lop off the problematic part. I do think what leadership could do is disavow any hate groups or any far extremists, partisan extremists that have influenced our local school board. We could disavow and distance ourselves from that problematic faction. And I think true leadership will call it out and distance himself from that type of activity.
Ms. Gadsden, thank you. Ms. Gammons, your response, and you have 60 seconds to respond.
I don't see it as a yes or no question. It would be difficult to say yes, independent school district, or no, the Charleston County School District. As mayor, I would encourage the Charleston County School District board members, trustees, to do what they are elected to do, and that is to represent our students, to educate our students. So I would continue to push for that. When you have an independent school district, then you're asking for individual monies and funds, and that could create a disservice for our students. So our students should come first. Education is super important. My grandmother had to drop out of school in the 3rd grade in order to work. So I understand the importance of education. And so what we need to do is put our students first. And I, as mayor, I will work with the Charleston County School District to do that, to hold them accountable for what they're doing. I'll be at the school board meetings, holding them accountable to ensure that they remember the children.
Ms. Gammons, thank you. Mr. Cogswell, 60 seconds to respond, please. Thank you.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, one that I haven't really thought about, but if I had to answer the question, I would probably say no. But I will say it's really unfortunate what's happening at the school board and the school district right now. It's really certainly not helping the kids. And as mayor of Charleston, you're supposed to be the mayor of everybody in the city. And when it comes to children, the mayor's job really is to make sure that the kids feel safe, kids can get to school on time through traffic and flooding, and that teachers can live affordably near their houses. I mean, that's where their focus should be as mayor, and the school board needs to work itself out.
Thank you, Mr. Cogswell. Mr. Middleton, your response?
I would not. There's a whole bunch of things that go along with that. We all know that Moms for Liberty is bad. We should not think like this is something new. They've been doing this across the country. They did it in Berkeley County, and voila, it happened here in Charleston. The issue is educating all of our kids is everyone's business. So as mayor of the city of Charleston, I would work to make sure that there is a strong partnership with the superintendent and the board as it relates to making sure that there are no low-performing schools in the city of Charleston, to making sure that we close the summer learning loss that exists for too many of our kids. And I would reinvigorate the Mayor's Office of Children, Youth, and Families so we think about all of this holistically and have the partnerships that are in place beyond August, first day back to school. If we were to do those things consistently and make sure that our community centers are extensions of learning, we can raise the academic achievement as well as the workforce and economic development opportunity for all kids and families in the city of Charleston.
Thank you, Mr. Middleton. Mr. Tecklenburg, your response, please. You have 60 seconds.
The board's job should be to provide an excellent education for all kids in Charleston County. Clearly, the present board is off track, and I've called for them to increase their transparency. They've been making decisions behind closed doors without public access. For them to do their job and focus on educating our kids rather than all these other issues they've gotten in a quagmire over. And I've asked them to have a supermajority when they hire or fire a superintendent. They need to build some trust and build some consensus on that board. I don't know why the legislature, when they switched over to single-member districts, didn't require a majority of voters to elect out of each district. I think that should be revisited. But honestly, if this board is not willing to focus on education of our kids, yes, I would advocate for the state to allow deconsolidation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tecklenburg. Mr. Shayed, you have 1 minute to respond. Same
yes,
question.
thank you. We have to remember one thing, that the present members of the school board were duly elected by the public. This is democracy. We may not agree with them, we may have problems with them, but they're duly elected members of the school board. And they have a responsibility, like all governing bodies, to be open and transparent on all of their actions and all of their votes and the decisions that they make in an open forum. I served on parochial school boards before. I understand the challenges that school boards have. But the Charleston County School District has one responsibility. Unlike local governments have, they have one responsibility. And that responsibility is to provide a quality education for all of our citizens throughout the Charleston County region. Provide the necessary facilities that are required and provide for good income for our teachers to make sure that they're following their mission. And that is what I would be doing, is making sure that they are fulfilling that obligation.
Thank you, Mr. Shayed. Riley.
Carolyn, thank you. Candidates, we're going to come to one question on traffic. You will have 30 seconds to answer this question. The question is, what can be done to help alleviate our traffic crunch and at the same time help keep our roads be more pedestrian and biker friendly? Ms. Gamons, will come to you first. Again, 30 seconds.
Traffic calming, lower speed limits, add bike lanes, and have a shuttle service where people can park and then get in vehicles if they need vehicles, because everybody isn't able to walk or ride a bicycle. That is a way in order to do that. So pay attention to that, fixing our roads and working with state government in order to fix our roads, fix our sidewalks. That's important.
Thank you, Ms. Gamons. Mr. Cogswell.
Timing of lights, adding lanes, particularly on Johns Island, doing the pitchfork plan on Johns Island, doing the flyover bridge on Johns Island, among other things. But also in terms, if you're going to make any real progress in major infrastructure, you've got to collaborate and work more closely with the county and with the state delegations.
Thank you, Mr. Middleton.
Less cars is going to be a start. So part of that, I think, as mayor of the city of Charleston, I would have a city infrastructure coordinator so that they could proactively apply for up to the 25 competitive grants that exist within the bipartisan infrastructure law that addresses transportation and traffic issues. I would also create a 10-minute, 30-minute communities as well. So we have to...
Thank you, Mr. Middleton. Mr. Tecklenburg.
So we do need better public transportation in Charleston, and that's why the city is working with North Charleston and our Council of Governments to bring low country rapid transit. It's under design. We've gotten $90 million from the federal government to move it along. It's coming. But yes, we have to collaborate. Did you know that the city gets zero money of the gas tax or the sales tax for roads? We have to work with the county and the South Carolina DOT, and we do.
Mr. Shayed. 30 seconds.
Yes, we need to come up with alternate means of transportation. And we are going to build a bridge over the Ashley River that's going to include for bike and pedestrians to get across from West Ashley into downtown. We need to have better and much more efficient public transportation available to our community. And we need to look at zoning to provide more density in certain parts of the city so people have the opportunity to live, work, and play in their area.
Mr. Shea, thank you, Ms. Gadsden.
We need to divest from more cars. More lanes means more cars, means more traffic. We need to invest in bike lanes. We need to also think about incentivizing bike riding, so that might mean looking like giving folks bikes or providing some sort of incentive. We need protected intersections, and we also need to make sure that we're investing in our public transit system.
All right. Candidates, thank you very much for your responses. Each of you is now allowed 1 minute to make a closing statement. Mr. Shayed, we begin with you.
Thank you.
Mr. Shayed.
I want to address the citizens of Charleston as if I am sitting with you at your kitchen table right now. We have 5 very fine candidates, in addition to myself, who are running for mayor. I respect and admire all of them. However, one of them is a Washington politician. The other is a Columbia politician who addressed state, not local issues, who's a developer, not a preservationist, who made his money developing Charleston and never paid any attention to the needs of West Ashley until this election. And our mayor, who people feel has let us down on these issues of public safety, affordable housing, flooding, and overdevelopment. I have served on city council for 8 years addressing these local issues. I am a former federal prosecutor who's addressed public safety issues, and I was a former neighborhood association president who understands these local issues. I ask for your vote, and together we will rethink Charleston. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shayed. Mr. Tecklenburg, 1 minute.
Thank you. We all know Charleston is a beautiful and historic city. We love it. It's a great place to live and work and raise a family. I've had the honor now to serve for 8 years as your mayor, and I'm also honored to work with an incredible team that we've built at the City of Charleston, who are serving our citizens and doing so much good in our community. I'll name just a few. Our police and firefighters, they're incredible. They're the best in the state, really the best in the nation as far as I'm concerned. Flooding and resiliency, that has raised its head in the last 8 years with sea level rise and storms. We have a world-class flooding and resiliency program going on. Go to our website and check out our sea level rise and flooding strategies. Affordable housing, the best department leader in the region, and the City of Charleston is doing more than anyone. Livability, we're building more parks. By the way, vote yes on the referendum to build more parks in Charleston.
Mr. Middleton, closing statement, please.
If you like what you have, I'm not your person, and that's okay. But if you expect more, want more, and deserve more from your mayor and city hall, I have something tangible to offer. I'm a byproduct of this community, born and raised in Bayside, Manor, graduated from Burke and the Citadel. I've served my country, I've served our state, I've served this community all of my life. And this is an opportunity for us to elevate our thinking in order to no longer settle for minimum standards, but to elevate that so we can accomplish more. As mayor of the City of Charleston, you can go to claymiddleton.com, and where I lay out very detailed, very specific things that not only that I would do as mayor, but what we can accomplish together. I do ask for your vote on or before November 7th. And if given the opportunity, we will create a Charleston that works for everyone. And more importantly, we will create a Charleston that is affordable, accessible, and livable for all residents first. Thank you.
Mr. Middleton, thank you. Mr. Cogswell, your closing statements, please.
Thank you. Yeah, 8 years, ladies and gentlemen, is a long time. 8 years ago, I was teaching my kids to ride a bike. Now my son can be drafted to go to war. And when I look around at my city and what's happened over the 8 years, has it gotten better? And I would say no, it's not better off when it comes to affordability. It's not better off when it comes to flooding. It's not better off when it comes to crime. And it's not better off when it comes to growth and development. Being mayor is not just an honor. It's a huge responsibility. This is not a ceremonial position. And we need a change. We need somebody that has vision, that has leadership, and a pragmatic approach to actually getting things done and addressing the problems that we have today. I believe I have that experience and expertise on the public and private sector side, and I'd be honored to have your vote on November 7th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cogswell. Ms. Gammons, you have 1 minute, please.
I love our city, and I will do everything as mayor in order to protect our city, to preserve our city, and to bring back that pride. It's so important as the mayor to lead by example, and that's what I will do. Diversity, equality, fairness, and inclusion, I will have that as part of city government, and also when the city interacts with anybody in the public. And building that strong foundation for the city, that's what I will do as mayor. I'm an attorney, a former prosecutor. I've worked with victims, with law enforcement, and will continue to do so. And working with our law enforcement to make sure that they are out in the community and working and protecting our individuals and protecting our people and preserving our beautiful city. That's what I will do for the city of Charleston as your mayor. Vote for Deborah Gammons.
Thank you, Ms. Gammons. Ms. Gadsden, your closing statements, please.
I'm running for mayor of Charleston because Charleston used to be a working class city. It's no longer that. The area median income is $100,000, while our food and bev workers average about $30,000 a year. Home prices have skyrocketed by nearly $250,000. It's not working. Charleston is not working for the working class. I've grown to really respect and admire my peers here, but there are some stark differences between each candidate. You have those who represent the status quo and those who represent development. We need leadership that represents working class Charlestonians. And I ask that you vote for Mika Gadsden in that ballot box come November 7th. Thank you.
Candidates, thank you so much for your responses and your participation in our debate tonight. We have enjoyed listening to you, and again, we appreciate it. Well, before we leave you tonight, a reminder to you watching and listening, early voting in South Carolina is underway. It will run through November 3rd. We want to thank the Charleston mayoral candidates once again.
Mika Gadsden, Deborah Gammons, William Cogswell, Clay Middleton, John Tecklenburg, and Peter Shea. Thank you guys for joining us. News 2 will be live breaking down tonight's debate on countdown2.com during our post-debate show. News 2's Brendan Clark and myself will host that.
Thank you again for watching the WCBD News 2 mayoral debate. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Again, thank you and good night.